Well, guys, we are only on the second episode, and already the control is starting to get out of Ford and the rest of Westworld headquarters' hands. Hey guys, so to Chestnut, and obviously I was so looking forward to this episode. You guys know how much I loved last week's premiere. I think it was probably the strongest premiere I've seen of any fall show so far, and I was definitely really excited for the second episode. I was a little bit worried it was going to let me down just because of how great the first episode was, but I have to say this episode was either right up there or even maybe better than the first episode. This episode really showed us what the show is going to be, really impressed me just as much, and it had some astounding sequences. I mean, this episode in general was incredible. I really am loving where the show's going, and it did kind of be like last week's episode, but a little bit different from a different perspective. But let's just get in this episode because there is a lot to talk about, just like last week. And I'm pretty sure it's giving me a show where I have a ton to talk about because there's so many characters and it's just so big and grand. And I'm really just loving it overall. But we start off and we see Dolores, who doesn't play a huge role in this episode, but you can definitely tell that something weird is going on with her. She wakes up in the middle of the night and we hear Stokes, I believe it was Stokes, he asks her if she remembers, and we don't know why she's outside, but basically we don't know what's going on there. So then we get to our main focus episode, which revolves around two men, Logan, who is a repeated visitor, and William, who is a first-time visitor. And the story really is driving on these two men. Yes, there's other stuff going on, but most of the episode is getting us introduced to Logan and William, and I really think they did a pretty great job with that. Logan is your stereotypical asshole guy who's like a bachelor and he likes to have a lot of banter with William, while William's kind of very down to earth, and we'll get into that. But basically William says he's being an asshole, Logan says he's being himself, which was the whole point of this trip, unless this uptight prick is who he really is, in which case he can feel free to be someone else. William says fuck him, and Logan says that's the spirit they got off the plane, and Logan goes to a woman and tells William to have fun and stay safe. A woman goes to him, welcomes him to Westworld, and she asks him some questions in order to get into the park, such as medical conditions or illness, and he says that he just has a fear of clowns, and she asks if he experiences social anxiety often. He asks what this is for. She says it's so they never give more than anything he can handle, and he says he thought they couldn't get hurt here. She says only the right amount, and I really did like seeing this from the guest's perspective, because the guests are one of the most important parts of Westworld. I mean, that's one of the things that goes into Westworld, is appealing to the guests, and seeing the guest's point of view, it did show us that really how shallow I think humanity has become, definitely, in how they are treating these, these hosts and everything. But you see that William, right off the bat, really does stand out. There's just something very different about him from the other humans, and I really like seeing that. So she says the only limit here is his imagination. He starts in the center of the park. It's simple, safe, and the further out he ventures, the more intense the experience gets. And she says how far he wants to go is entirely up to him. She brings him into headquarters, and he asks if there's an orientation. She says there's no orientation and no guidebook, and I thought this was kind of cool. We actually get to see how people actually get to Westworld, and how they actually get on that train, and basically she's figuring out how it works is half the fun. All he does is make choices. Starting here, everything is bespoke and exactly his size, and he asks her if she's real. She says if he can't tell, obviously she's not, and asks if it matters. He asks if the guns are real. She says they're real enough, but he can't kill anyone that he's not supposed to. Of course, that being the guest, he can't kill the guest. And she asks if there's anything he'd like. He asks if there's a changing room or a robe, and she says she could help him, or if he prefers, she could step outside. He asks if that's what most people do. She says he doesn't have to worry about that. He says he understands. She asks if he really does. Says all the hosts are there for him, including her. They could stay there a while if he'd like, take as long as he wants. He thanks her, says he doesn't want to keep his friend waiting, and she tells him to take his time. And I thought this was a really great introduction into this character. Right off the bat, you can see that William, he's very intrigued by what's going on. At the same time, it's very overwhelming, and that's a big part of this episode, is really how overwhelming of a place Westworld really is, and how unfamiliar territory this is to William. And I really did love his character overall. So Bernard then goes to Elsie, asks her how the build for the new narrative is coming along, and She says she'll get around to it and says they assume that Abernathy's breach was actually triggered by the photograph that he found. And she says that she's reviewed every dissonant episode she could find. The reaction is immediate every time. This guy makes it all the way back home, and it's like he's mulling it over. And he asks if she thinks he had an existential crisis. She says something fucked up is going on with his cognition. She thinks that he feels the same way she does, and he asks if they know where the error originated, and she says they did. And then he covered for him and tells him to let her rebuild Abernathy and make sure this is not something more serious. So he says that she knows the policy to let it lie, and she says to let it at least pull the host who had contact with him, like Dolores, because this is not a dissonant episode, then whatever Abernathy had could be contagion. That is definitely going to be one of the driving, I think, elements of this season, is that, could this, whatever Abernathy had, could this possibly go airborne? We're definitely starting to see that happen here. And he says Dolores was examined and cleared. The stories are best left to the guest, and definitely we see that there's something definitely off about Dolores. I mean, Bernard thinks she's okay, but there's definitely something off about her. She's walking into town like her scene usually would, and then she suddenly sees this really weird hallucination where literally everyone's dead. And I'm talking about, like, not just the, host, the guests are dead, everyone is dead. There's just a horse there, and she's pulled out a hallucination. Maeve goes to her, who a lot of this episode focuses on. We really do get into Maeve's character, and Thandie Newton is just so great in this role. I'm really loving the character of Maeve, but she asks if she could stand somewhere else, says she doesn't want anyone thinking that she's representing the good inside. Dolores says he's violent, and Dolores says the same thing that Abernathy said to her, that these violent delights have violent ends, and it seems like by saying this is kind of like this is what makes it contagious. It's kind of like passing a virus along. I thought it was interesting the way we saw that. The way they're kind of just passing this virus along one by one. They don't really realize that. I'm definitely interested in, and definitely add a whole new layer to this that I'm already really enjoying. So William then goes to the host, tells him that there's one final touch, and asks him which room he wants to choose. He chooses a door suddenly in the saloon, goes to Logan, who asks him if he can believe this place. William asks how they get into the park, and suddenly they're on the train. So I like that all of that was very quickly just shown to us, because that's a perfect example of show not tell. I like that Logan didn't explain to him. We saw how it played out, because yeah, we do want to see what we get into Westworld. I mean, imagine if Westworld was a real place. We want to see how we get into it, and Logan says he knows, he thinks he has a handle. What is this gonna be? Guns and tits and all the shit he usually enjoys, and says he has no idea. This place seduces everybody eventually, and by the end he will be begging him to stay, because this place is the answer to what he has been asking himself, that question being who he really is. And says he can't wait to meet that guy. They drink, and you definitely see how cocky, Logan really is. Like I said, he's definitely a very cocky character. I didn't think he was annoying, though. I know a lot of people were annoyed by him. I didn't really find him annoying. I just found him as someone who's very experienced and has very much picked up the nature of, being a human in Westworld and the not giving a shit attitude. And William is that first-time visitor that's very tentative on really what's going on and actually does have that humanity when it comes to Westworld in him. Logan definitely has humanity. I'm not saying he's not a human, but he definitely is a lot more shallow because he's been there so many times and he knows what it's like at this point. So the Sheriff Lawrence is performing a hang of some criminals for ruthless murder. The man in black shows up and asks if he's helping them straighten out the rope again, and definitely we're starting to get a sense of who the man in black really is in this episode. The man in black says that he was hoping to have a word with his friend. The man says he can have as many words as he'd like as soon as his neck is broke. The man in black says that that's not going to work for him. The man says that he should tell his men they're to dig that grave a couple feet deeper, and the man in black says it's going to be an awful tight fit for all of them. They all draw their guns, shoot both the men that are about to be hanged. The man and Lawrence tries to run away, but is killed. Well, not Lawrence, but the man that Lawrence was next to tries to run. Lawrence is set free, and Lawrence asks if he knows him, and the man in black says his pal Kizzy sent him his way and sent his regards, and he shows him the tattoo on his scalp, which turns out actually to be a maze, we find out. And I like that we weren't left waiting. That's something that Westworld is doing a very good job with. There's a lot of the bigger questions. We're not getting the bigger questions, but a lot of the questions we had in the first episode, they're already explained to us, which I like seeing. Not many shows do that. A lot of shows would, wait a while to explain it, and I like the show's not doing that. So the man in black says that is the deepest level of the game. He's going to help him find the entrance. He drags him with a rope tied around his neck and basically is forcing him to do this. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. He's going to do this, and, he really doesn't have a choice. So Maeve talks to a guest, says that he can hear it, the little voice, the one that's telling him don't stare too long, don't touch, and don't do anything that he might regret. She says she used to be the same whenever she wanted something. She could hear that voice telling her to stop and to be careful, to leave most of her life unlived, and the only place the voice left her alone was in her dreams. She was free. She could be as good or as bad as she thought like being, and if she wanted something, she could just reach out and take it. And this is the perfect example of really seeing the host perspective on things, because in their mind, they don't really have a control of themselves. I mean, they're controlled completely by Ford, Bernard, Stubbs, Cullen, all those people. They're controlled by everyone in Westworld. They don't have, they don't really have a say in what's going on. And Maeve wants to have that control. She wants to be driven and she wants to have goals, but she can't achieve said goal. The only time she can is in that dream. And she says she ran across the shiny sea, and then she finally set foot back on solid ground. The first thing she heard was that goddamn voice, and she sees a violent vision of a horse being mutilated. Her running to the guest says to, and her running to it, we don't really know what's going on there, but the guest says to excuse him. Maeve is then in headquarters, and the man interrogating her asks what it said. She says it said that this is a new world, and in this world you can be whoever the fuck you want. The man says her pulmonary response is good, her hearing is good, and he says that, he'd fuck her and everything, so he doesn't really know what the problem is. She seems perfectly fine to him, but the woman says the guest wouldn't, and says Lee is launching some big new storyline. He wants them to clear the dead weight, and if they don't get their numbers back up, she be decommissioned, and says they should bump her aggression 10%, and she says she's a hooker, there's no point in playing coy, and if they don't work, and if that doesn't work, they'll punt them to behavior and let them deal with it. So basically, they're going to do whatever they can to, they need to reprogram her, because clearly there's something going on. So Ford goes to Bernard, who says they were tired of the two hosts in question, says he taught them how to make them, but not how hard it is to turn them off, and Ford says he can't play God without being acquainted by the devil. He asks if someone else is bothering him, and Bernard says the photograph alone couldn't have caused that level of damage to Abernathy. I mean, there had to have been something more. It couldn't have just been this photograph that made him this way. Not without some other outside interference. And Ford asks if he thinks it's sabotage. He says he can't imagine someone's been diddling with their creations. And Bernard says it's the simplest solution. Ford says the problem is what they do is so complicated. They practice witchcraft, they speak the right words, and they create life itself out of chaos. And he says William of Ockham was a 13th century monk. He can't help them now. He'd have to burn them at the stake. And again, they're really at a crossroads here, because again, as we know, Ford thinks this is as good as it's going to get. He doesn't feel there's going to be any more advancement in human technology, that this is really it, that the hosts are the last of it, and they're trying to do the best they can, but they're definitely seeing that there definitely are fuck-ups along the way, and I'm really interested in seeing their whole relationship overall. There's definitely a whole deeper layer to it, but we just don't know what it is yet, and I'm really loving where that's going. So Logan and William get off the train. Logan says should go get their feet wet, and William walks into someone. They see the papers being handed out to join the Civil War. William says it's bigger than he thought it would be. Logan says this is just Sweetwater, tells him to wait till he sees the rest of the park. William asks how much bigger it is, and Logan says he has no idea, he never reached the end. And Clementine asks him if he's seen something like this. I'm not going to lie, Clementine's extremely attractive. I honestly don't blame the guests for feeling the way they do towards her, because I probably do the same thing. He says a couple things at least, but he's gonna make her beg for it. And again, Logan is used to this, so he's not just gonna have sex with anyone. He knows how this works, and he's been there many times, so he's gonna do things differently. And again, it all depends on how the guests react, and I really did love the way that was done. William then sees a man fall and asks him if he needs a hand, and again, just trying to be a kind person, treating him like a normal human, which is basically what the hosts want to be treated like. But again, Logan has seen this all before. He says to not help him. He literally says to not help him because he'll only try to rope into some bullshit treasure hunt. Says it's to come on the girl next door. They're drunk. They all got some big adventure. They want to sell him on, and says they're not going anywhere. And first up, he's going to buy him a drink, and he's going to make sure it goes the way he wants it to. He's not going to let William clearly, go along with it. He's going to try to get him to make his own decision. So Dolores sees another vision, and Bernard tells her to bring herself back online. He asks if she remembers their last conversation. She says she does, and he asks if she's told anyone about their little talk. She says he told her not to. He tells her to step into analysis, and he asks her how many interactions she's participated in since they last talked. She says there's been 138 encounters, including this one, and he asks if anyone has updated or altered her heuristics in that time. Sorry if I can't pronounce that word right, but she says that they haven't. He tells her to resume. He says he thinks it would be best if she doesn't mention the things that they've been talking about, and she asks if she's done something wrong. He says there's something different about her, the way that she thinks. He finds it fascinating, but others might not see it that way. And she asks if he's done something wrong, and he tells her to turn on her event log, erase this interaction, and she does as asked. At least we think she does. Honestly, the way that Dolores is right now, I don't really know if she erased that interaction. I think, she wants him to think that, but we don't really know if she did. We'll have to see. So the next day, Maeve is with another guest, tells her the story, pushes her up against the wall. The guest says she's not interested right now, and Maeve asks the bartender for a glass of sherry. She sees Clementine and tells her that she told her never to open her mouth, that wide unless someone's paying you for it, and Clementine tells her she didn't sleep much last night. Maeve asks if she's having nightmares again last night, and Maeve says to do what she does, close her eyes, count backwards from 3, and wake herself up and nice and warm and safe in her bed where she can get fucked right back to sleep, and she tells her to go back to work, and Teddy, who's not in this episode a lot, but definitely when he's in, it's very important. He asks her if she's alright. She tells him to pay for the drinks and has no right to gawk at her. Stubbs then gets word of what is happening to Maeve, and Stubbs says to give the job to Clementine since she's done the job before, because Maeve's not acting like herself. I mean, this is not the way they programmed her. She's doing things against, the way that the storyline's supposed to go, and he doesn't really know what's going on. He feels that they just need to reprogram her. So they then will recall decommission her in the morning. So he feels that that's that simple. We can definitely tell it's not, though. So Bernard goes to Cullen, says the QA will fine for this, and the woman in charge is quite formidable. Cullen says she can just say bitch since he hears it enough, and he says she's been talking to corporate. The only time she lights up is after she's been. And Cullen says this character analysis routine isn't half as charming as he thinks. He says it went well. She says to just tell her when the department is ready for the launch, and he says that they are. So she then asks about Abernathy and the update and says if she hears the department is still asking questions, and he says that's what she pays them to do, says all the hosts are back to normal, and she says that's good, they wouldn't want anything disturbing their guests from the rape pillage, and basically, it seems like everything's fine there. So Logan and William are at dinner. Logan asks if he's wondering how to tell the hosts from them, and he says the quickest way to find out is to literally shoot them. Like, he literally has a gun there. And again, William tells him to finish eating first. Logan says he's always worried about making a mess. He's the same way at work. He's talented, driven, and inoffensive. William says he thought he didn't want to talk about work there, and Logan says, who says this trip isn't work? The old man gestures to them. Logan tells him not to make any eye contact. The old man thanks William. Logan says to leave them the fuck alone. The old man says he'd like to offer them an opportunity of a lifetime and tries to send him on a treasure hunt. Logan literally stabs him in the hand. Crazy scene, but he said he's not interested, and again, it just shows how savage and how inhuman they treat these hosts, because again, to Logan, he sees them as objects. He just sees them as all part of the fun. William clearly sees them as something more. He actually does see them as actual humans, and he doesn't just treat them like, they're objects. He actually does see more than that, and I thought it was interesting to see. I really love that scene overall. Basically, Logan ends up in an orgy. Clementine then goes to William, says it sounds like he's having fun. William says it's not the term he'd use. Clementine asks if he means fun. He says friend, and she says he's funny. And basically, he doesn't really see him as a friend anymore, because Logan's not really treating him like a friend. He's kind of being an asshole to him. And basically, she says they say a man can tickle someone's humor who can tickle them, and he says she doesn't have to do this. She says if he's not his type, they find someone who's perfect for him. He says she's perfect, but he has somebody real waiting for him at home. And I'm really struggling to figure out if that's actually true, or if William just said that because he's not comfortable having sex with a host. I really couldn't tell. Maybe a little bit of both. I honestly don't know, but she says she understands. She says real love is always worth waiting for. She kisses him, and just again, a really good scene, really showing the way that he looks at these hosts. He looks at them as actual people and not just human, and not just objects, and I really like seeing that. So back at headquarters, Lee says he asks for someone real, strong, virile, and aquiline. He says if this is what she gave him, tells her to start over. She says she could just shut it down. He grabs a pan, literally throws it, and says he said to start the fuck over. And Cullen says he's diplomatic as ever. She says she receives a request to retire an additional 50 hosts, because remember, that's what he said to do in the last episode, and he says he needs room for his new storyline. Says not exactly a savage who's formed 20 savages, and she says he gets 20 additional hosts, not 50, and he says the board won't care about a few extra line items, and She asks if Ford has even approved the narrative yet. He says he hasn't weighed on in the storyline in years. It seems like Ford doesn't really have much of an opinion there, which I found very interesting. The fact that Ford makes these storylines, he made this park, and he hasn't really weighed in on the storyline, given his opinion, I thought was very interesting. We saw that, and really says a lot about Ford's character. But anyway, she says if corporate does want to cut their costs, their fearless leaders, old hosts, aren't the only things ready for their knacker's yard. So Ford is then walking in the park, and we see this little boy who asks if he's lost, and Ford says he's not, he just strayed a bit too far. We don't know where Ford is, but he asked where he's supposed to be, same as him, as he'd imagined. The boy says they're on holiday, and it's boring there. Their father said they could do as they please, and Ford says his father used to say that only boring people get bored, and only people who are boring don't, and he says he's taking a walk, he's welcome to join if he'd like, and I thought it was interesting to see what they did there. So the man in black then takes Lawrence to a small town, and this scene was just insane. It really was. We see Lawrence tells him to go fuck himself, asks if he has any idea who he is. The man in black says he knows exactly who he is, which is why he was so surprised when Kissy told him about this place, his home. He says they've hunted down Ghost Nation braves in their winter grounds, and he knows the whiskey he likes to drink, the tune of his whistle. But again, as you remember, every single, host, when something bad happens, their memory's completely wiped. So Lawrence has no recollection of the man in black because of this. But obviously the man in black has a recollection of him because he's a human and he has memories. So he says when he's taking a piss, he never told me he had a family, and his daughter runs to him, and it's kind of a tender scene. The man in black says this is what he loves about this place, all the secrets, all those things he never noticed, even after all these years. He asks if he knows why this beats the real world. He says because the real world is just chaos and is an accident, but in there, every detail adds up to something, even him, and he asks him about the entrance to the maze again. Lawrence says he knows nothing about it. The man in black asks if he has anything to tell him. He then threatens Lawrence's family, literally kills their brother before mowing down a second posse of men, and right before the battle starts, a Westworld employee asks Stubbs if they should slow the man in black down, as, he's already killed one gang today, but Stubbs says he gets whatever he wants. So it seems like they've been dealing with him a lot, and they don't really care what the man in black does, which is interesting, and it's definitely not that, oh, he's just another guest. There's definitely more to him than that, especially we find out next. Lawrence says he feels bad since he doesn't understand he's been coming here for 30 years, and man in black says he doesn't understand he's been coming here for 30 years, and mentions that he was born at Westworld nearly 30 years ago, and if you remember, the last time the incident happened was 30 years ago, so I'm assuming that that really is in direct result of the man in black. I don't really know exactly what it is, but apparently this is why he comes. The man in black kills all of Lawrence's cousins. He then kills his wife. A very hard scene to watch. He tells Lawrence when he's suffering, that's when he's most real. And when Lawrence still won't talk, that triggers Lawrence's daughter to finally give the location of the maze, but not before warning that the maze isn't meant for him. And the man in black then says that there's always another level. He says he'll take his chances, and she says to follow the blood Ario to the place where the snake lays its eggs. And Lawrence says he has it now, whatever he wants, says to go home, leave them alone, and just not, he doesn't want anything to do with them, obviously. So the man in black says this time he's never going back home. He drags Lawrence away to places unknown, and just a really creepy scene. Again, it really does show what the man in black is capable of, how far he's willing to go. I mean, this guy really seems to have no limits whatsoever, and we're definitely seeing that. But there's definitely a reason why he's so savage and so direct about everything. There's definitely a reason why. We just don't know what that is yet. So Ford leads the boy to an empty field. The boy tells him a story about his father and brother. They end up in a place called Nowhere Land, which the last time I heard Nowhere Land was the show Maggie and the Ferocious Beast. I don't know why I thought of that, but that was the last time I heard of Nowhere Land, honestly. I'm not going to lie to you. That was the last time I heard of it. I know it has nothing to do with this, but that's honestly what I thought of. I don't know if that's the child in me. I don't know if that makes me, way too sentimental, but that's what I thought of when I heard of Nowhere Land. But I think it's kind of cool it's called Nowhere Land, because Ford says it seems hardly a fitting name for a place so full. He asks if he can see it. He says he's not looking hard enough. He asks what, and he says the town with the white church, which stands buried in the sand, and asks if he can hear its bell. It turns out that the boy is actually another one of his hosts, and Ford tells him that everything in this world is magic except the magician, and Ford sends him away while looking at the steeple. And a lot of people are thinking that this is Ford's younger self, and this is him getting in touch with his younger self. Remember, we know next to nothing about Ford. I mean, most of the residents in Westworld know next to nothing about Ford, and it definitely seems like he's a very troubling past, and there's definitely something going on with him, but we just don't know what it is yet, and I can't wait to find out what that something is, because there's definitely something off about Ford, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what that is. So then in an interesting twist, we see Bernard returns to his home, which appears to be inside the Westworld facility, actually, and he's closely followed by Cullen. And it turns out these two actually seem to be in a relationship. It seems that they're together, and afterwards, he tells her to stay a little longer. They can talk. She says that they never do. He says he's serious, and she says she is too. Says he's certainly a man comfortable with long, pensive silences, although ironically, his creations never shut up. They're always talking to each other, even when there's guests around. He says there's always trying to error correct it to make themselves more human. And when they talk to each other, it's a way of practicing. So I thought that was a very interesting scene, the way we saw that. And now it's really going to make me look at Cullen and Bernard's scenes a lot differently. Now knowing these two are together, I really like seeing that. So Elsie gets her hands on Maeve before she decommissioned, runs a quick diagnostic, and as she's looking into Maeve's code, Elsie's assistant asks if the hosts dream, to which Elsie replies that while the hosts don't dream, they do understand the concept of nightmares in order to cover up any screw-ups made when the hosts go in for maintenance. So Elsie tweaks her personality a bit, sends Maeve back into the park, which seems to fix Maeve's problem, and after sending one of the brothers' clients off with Clementine, Maeve chats up Teddy, who says she seems convinced. She says the first voice she heard when she got off the boat was a nice young man from Baton Rouge who said her pussy could earn her in $2 whole a day. He'd be more than happy to let her have that 30%, and he says he guesses they could add lying to her list of sins. She says the only thing bad about the 7 deadly sins is that there aren't more of them, and says her transgressions wash off a little easier than his. Says at least when her girls are done with the man, he is at least left breathing for the most part, alluding that Teddy has killed someone. And I'm not talking about a guest. I'm not talking about a host. It seems like Teddy has actually killed someone. Who this someone is, we don't know, but the two try to toast to their indiscretions, and a guest randomly shoots Teddy multiple times, and he kills him for the 3rd time this season. James Marsden really is just getting screwed over. Thank God these hosts can come back, because I don't know how many times they're going to get Teddy killed, but if he gets killed every episode, it's going to be kind of hilarious, but at the same time, I feel bad for him. But that was kind of interesting to see. Again, he's killed, and we then get this incredible flashback with Maeve where she falls asleep, and we then see her again in that dress, with that horse, and we realize that this is actually a flashback to her past life. When she had a family, she lived on a farm away from town. I got the impression this wasn't in Westworld, like maybe this was before she went to Westworld, but her farm was attacked by a band of Indians. She grabbed her daughter, ran back into their farmhouse, and they're chased by a brave. However, it isn't and it's such a well-done scene because you don't know what's going to happen here. However, and I love that there was no dialogue as well. I thought that was really well done. However, it isn't the brave that enters to kill Maeve. It's actually the man in black. So it definitely, again, seems like the man in black has some sort of agenda. I think that's very interesting, and it seems like he's kind of there to create chaos, but we'll have to see. Maeve then closes her eyes and wakes herself up from her nightmare, only to discover that she's now in Westworld's body shop with a big gaping hole in her abdomen, and she grabs a scalpel, freaks out the 2 men working on it before running out of the body shop through the rest of the Westworld facility. She runs to a different part of the building where employees appear to be scrubbing down hosts who have died that day, including Teddy. She drops to her knees, which allows the body shop employees to catch up to her, shut her down a second time, and obviously, again, she really is in very bad shape, at least they think so, and we'll have to see where that's going to go, because that's going to be really interesting. But I really love diving deeper into Maeve's character. I love where she's head overall, and it definitely seems like no matter what they're going to do, she's starting to remember prior builds. We definitely do see that, and I'm looking forward to seeing where that's going to go. Dolores then wakes up in the middle of the night, just like we saw in the beginning of the episode, and she heads back to the field, but this time she's pulling a gun out of the dirt, and I have no idea where this is going to go, but Dolores has her hands on a gun. This obviously is not going to end well. I mean, Dolores is not supposed to have a gun. We know that for a fact, and Lee then reveals his new storyline, Odyssey on Red River, but Ford shuts it down immediately, saying that it's not enough. Ford says that it's not enough to give guests what they think they want. It's the subtleties of the stories. And Ford says that the guests come back to Westworld because they discover things that no one else has, things they fell in love with. And as he says this, we flash to Westworld, where William actually meets Dolores for the first time. Looks like they're going to have some sort of connection. We'll have to see where that's going to go. But I really love the way that Ford just shut him down. And again, we know that Ford hasn't had much insight on the stories, but he actually did have an insight here, and he actually stopped Lee, and I think it's interesting the way that's going to go, and there definitely seemed like there was going to be some clashing between these two, which I'm looking forward to seeing. So the episode ends with Ford promising Bernard he has a new storyline that's quite original. He takes him to a church steeple buried in the middle of the desert, where that house was. We don't know where it is, but it definitely alludes that there's more than one Westworld, which we know there is, and that is the way the episode ends. Great stuff overall. Let's just get into this episode because I have a lot to talk about in regards to predictions for next week. So really, this was again a really epic episode. There was so much going on in this episode, and I'm really loving everything about it. First of all, let's talk about what's happening with the host, because I think, while Ford and Stubbs, they're convinced that, oh, just decommission them, wipe their brains, that's the best thing they can do. That's clearly not working. I mean, whatever Abernathy did by saying these violent ends, these violent things at violent ends, that is, like I said, spreading this, disease or whatever you really want to call it. I don't really know what it is, this virus, whatever it really is. But that's really what's making them this way. And I don't really know if they're realizing that. But I like that this is kind of out of their hands. There's really not much they can do there. We'll have to see where that's going to go. I really love where Maeve's going, because she's definitely starting to recall her past. And it definitely seems like the Man in Black has had a huge hand in many of their traumas. And again, it seems like Stubbs doesn't want to do much about him. What is the Man in Black really there for? How long has he been coming to Westworld? I mean, we know he's been there for 30 years, but what kind of history does he have with all of them? What has he really been doing? I mean, I can't really tell, but we'll have to see where he's going. And why is he as savage as he is when it comes to getting answers? What is he really trying to do? We'll have to see. That's going to be very interesting to see as the season goes on. But the other big question I have is William and Dolores. Where is this really headed? I don't really know. Dolores now has this gun. I don't know if she's going to try to convince William to do something, but William clearly feels for the host, and I think he's really going to start to see how inhuman this really all is, because it's a horrible place. It really is. I mean, this is a place where they treat them like complete objects. I mean, it's kind of like slavery, honestly. It really is like slavery. It's hosts being abused who want to be treated like humans, and William does see that. Logan clearly doesn't, because he's been there many times, but William seems like he's going to abandon Logan. I can't wait to see where the storyline's going to go. I think that's going to be very interesting overall. And why Dolores has this gun, I don't really know, but that's going to be interesting where that's headed. Lee and Ford, there's definitely hints that there's going to be a lot of tension between these two in the season, definitely. I mean, Lee clearly has ideas that Ford does not agree with, and Ford has ideas that Lee does not agree with. And we definitely see there's a lot of clashing there, and especially the fact that Ford hasn't provided insight on something till now definitely should tell us something. There's a reason why, we don't know why, but definitely there's more going on with that church steeple. We don't really know what it is. I mean, I know in the movie it turned out that there's more than one Westworld, and I think that's where we're headed with this season, because that's where the show's going to go on. As you guys know, the show is set up for 5 seasons, and I think that's how they're really going to do that, but we'll have to see really where that's going to go. I think that's going to be interesting overall. Teddy keeps getting shot. I mean, seriously, out of all the characters, they just keep killing this guy, and I don't know why. I mean, I do know why, obviously, because, they want to show that no one can get killed, really. But they allude to the fact that Teddy has killed someone, and I didn't really get the sense that it was someone as in a host. I think he might have actually killed a guest, and we'll have to see where that's going to go, because I don't really know what's going on there, but that's going to be very interesting. And then the only other thing to really talk about is Ford and that little boy. I am, 100% convinced that that little boy was a reincarnation of his younger self. I don't know why exactly Ford did this, what his reasoning behind it was, but I'm looking forward to seeing really what's going to happen there. Overall, guys, I'm loving this show. This show just is everything I want it to be. It's, it's revealing, it's heartbreaking, it's emotional, it has such great characters, and if it keeps this up, I'm going to love the show more and more as it goes on. But let me know what you guys thought of this episode. Love to hear your thoughts on it. I'm really loving the show overall. And that's my review. Hope you enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for the season premiere of Supergirl, which I can't wait for. And I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.